Hi, this is part 2 of the abstract animation lesson. I forgot to mention in the previous video that you should also add sound to your final product for your abstract animation, but don't use the same music that the original creator used for theirs, okay? Pick something from a royalty-free music site. In part 1 of this lesson, I showed you how I imported this video and that you could play it in the background and that this could help you while you were going through the process of copying from that original. Also, when I copied this video from the internet, I saved it at a very low quality because importing videos into this software can really cause it to bog down and not run well for you. So keep that in mind if you decide to use this method while you're working on this project. Now I'd like to give you some pointers on how you can basically dissect a video and figure out just how to go about replicating the part that you're going to use. Now, first off, in this example, the little piece that I'm going to show you doesn't start at the very beginning of this video. I need to move the part that I want to use over to frame 0. So I click on the Sequencer tab and then select the layer of the animation and I start sliding it backwards. Now I just realized that I hadn't gone back to frame 0 and that's fine. I'm just going to type that in now and I will continue to move this, and you can't see anything happening here, which can seem kind of confusing. But if I click over here now and test where I'm at, I can continue to click and drag this over to the left, and then I start to see a difference in what the beginning actually is from frame 0 forward. Okay, so I want to start out when I see the several triangles here on the screen, so it's at about right there. That's at about the point that I want to demonstrate for you. So I want this to be at frame 0 right here. I'll move this over and, well, that's pretty good right there. So you can see what I did there. I am at frame 0, but I now have a new starting point for the animation. And if I clicked play, and then it moves on forward from that point. So let's look at this together. Going back now, I've got a whole mess of triangles that I would need to deal with, and they would all start out kind of spread apart and then move in closer together, and in front of it would be a circle that would appear. It would go larger, which is pretty easy, and then there's another one, different color, that gets large, and another, and that's all pretty easy, and another, and then something else happens. Okay, so let's go back to this group of triangles. If I wanted to replicate this animation, the best thing to do is it's one triangle per layer. Don't try to draw a bunch of objects all together on one layer. It's always best, especially with these abstract animations, to make sure that every object is on its own layer by itself. You can control it much better that way. Now in this case, this is so easy because all the triangles are the same size. All I need to do is make one on one layer and then use the duplicate layer command over here in the layers palette to make all the rest of them. Now a couple of things before I start drawing. One is I need to go over here and click back on the Channels tab, and the other is that I will double click on this video file and I will change the opacity down to say 40% and click OK. So I would create a new vector layer. I would name it Triangle 1. I would go over here and click on the Draw Shape tool, click on the triangle, and make a triangle and modify that in whatever way I need to. And that may be that I would need to take off the outline, perhaps make sure that that shape is actually about as large as the ones that I see on the screen. Once I've gotten that set up, then I would just go over here and make 11 duplicates of that triangle. So I have 12 altogether. And that way I can click back on triangle 2 and put that one here. And you can see where I'm going with this, so I don't need to continue on screen with showing you that I'm going to place all 12 triangles. Okay, so I placed all 12 triangles. I made a colored background, and if I shut off the original animation, you can see that this is what I have. Similar to the original, but a little bit different. Now, one thing that I do need to do is take this original and move it up above everything else. It ended up behind my triangles, and that won't work out when we're looking at what comes next. If I click over here and scrub across, I can observe that my triangles need to move outward and then they'll move inward. And so I can animate mine accordingly. Right here on frame 7 happens to be when they stop moving outward. So on frame 7, I can just go from triangle to triangle of mine, click on the transform layer, and just place. So you can see that this can help. Okay, it isn't an end-all solution. It isn't cheating because you still are going to meet with some challenges when you're animating your objects, but this can really help you to think through processes and figure out how you would need to go about moving objects and how to transform them from one moment to the next. Okay? So I paused briefly again and let me shut off that original animation and go back, and this will be pretty fast, but I'll click the play button. Okay, so that was that small part. And I know that the next part is when they all start moving in towards each other. But I think you're getting the idea now. All right. I might get to that point right there and know that I need to start moving in on this, let's see, where am I at? Frame 29, and take each triangle and move it towards the center. Again, I paused and I moved all of my triangles. Let's turn off the original so that we can look at the progress. Now here's another extremely important tip for you that probably you're best off using this only for this abstract project. If you go up here to Edit and Preferences, and then you click on the Tools tab up here, you can uncheck the box that says Enable Drawing Tools only on frame 0. All right, take the check mark off of there and click OK. That box is normally checked by default because, particularly for beginner animators, you can end up making a real mess of things and end up very confused about why you're having all kinds of problems when you're not restricted to drawing new objects on frame 0. Anyway, if you uncheck that box, you're free of that, and that can make it a little bit easier to work with these abstract animations. So in this example, as we saw, let me turn this back on and then go back a little bit here. As we saw, once the triangles converged near the center, all of a sudden a circle appeared. I can now draw that circle right on frame 27. So I can go over here to the Layers palette, click on New Layer Vector. I'm going to name it Circle 1. And then I'll go to the Drawing Tools and choose the circle. It's very important right now that I go up to Animation, Add Keyframe. Okay, that's very important because I'm not drawing at frame 0. So I have to create this set of keyframes right here. Now I'll choose color for the circle, and I'll hold Shift and Alt down so that I can draw from center. So that's approximately the size of their circle. It's a little bit off. And then if I scrub through the timeline to see what theirs is doing, it just gets bigger over time until it takes over the whole image area. So in order for me to do that with my circle, I'll need to zoom out, okay? And then I'll click on the transform layer tool and I'll just enlarge my circle until it engulfs the whole stage area as well. And you can see that it's a little bit off. I didn't really center that very well. So let me go back to frame 0 and hide that original animation and play mine through. All right. So I ended up being able to mimic the results that I saw in that original animation based on kind of just taking everything in little pieces and thinking through, how am I going to do this? But one thing is certain, you're going to be best off if every single object that you're working with has its own layer, right? If you're trying to put too many objects on one layer, or even just a couple of objects on one layer, chances are you're going to run into all kinds of problems that are difficult to resolve. Now, because obviously everybody's picking a different abstract animation and I can't know which one you're choosing, there's no way for me to walk through every possible scenario to be able to demonstrate different tactics or techniques. So if you're having trouble trying to figure out something, just email me and I'll help you figure it out. Remember to choose your own royalty-free music instead of using the original animator's music. And also, if you do use this technique where you've embedded the original into your animation, when you know that you're ready and you're happy with the way that yours is coming out, you should delete the original before you render out your MP4 video. Obviously, you can't have theirs playing over top of or half faded in the background along with yours. And also, it's just going to bog down your system trying to render out the MP4 if you have that original animation in there with yours. So good luck with the project and email me if you have questions.